Hi everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you to this episode of All Things Lean with your host Madhulika Rajahan. In our last episode, we talked about the Gestalt Principles. In today's session, we'll talk about the rest of the Gestalt Principles we left in the last session. Let's begin with a little recap of the Gestalt Principles. Gestalt principles are principles or laws of human perception that describe how humans group similar elements, recognize patterns, and simplify complex images when we perceive objects. Designers use the principle to organize content on websites and other interfaces so it is aesthetically pleasing and easy to understand. Gestalt is German for unified whole. German psychologists Max Wertheimer, Kurt Koffka, and Wolfgang Kohler created the Gestalt principles in the 1920s. They wanted to understand how people make sense of the confusing things they see and hear. They identified a set of laws that address the natural compulsion to find order in disorder. According to this, the mind informs what the eyes see by perceiving a series of individual elements as a whole. Graphic designers quickly embraced Gestalt principles, using them to create eye-catching designs with well-placed elements. Gestaltism's philosophy is not the same as Aristotle's saying the whole is greater than the sum of parts. In Gestaltism, the whole is different and may even be completely unrelated to its parts. Gestalt principles are an essential part of visual design. There are more than 10 overlapping principles. We discussed 6 of them in our last session. They were emergence, closure or reification, common region, continuity or continuation, proximity, and multistability. We will discuss the next 6 today: figure or ground, invariance, pragnance, similarity, symmetry and order, and common fate. Figure or ground. We dislike uncertainty, so we look for solid, stable items. Unless an image is ambiguous, like Rubens' vase, we see its foreground first. You can apply figure or ground in many ways, but chiefly to contrast elements. For example, light text, that is figure, from a darker background, that is ground. When you use figure ground well alongside other considerations such as color theory, you'll help guide users in their tasks and lessen their cognitive load. Figure or ground and multistability are sometimes confused to be the same. However, there is a slight difference. In most cases, background and foreground are stable. But in some cases, such as optical illusions of Rubens' vase, it can contribute to multistability. Rubens' vase is a classical illustration that demonstrates the principle of figure and ground and multistability. If you consider a white background, you can see a black vase in the foreground. And if you consider a black background color, you will see two faces looking at each other. When an interface's color scheme changes from light to dark, the previously black text becomes white and the white background becomes black. Even though the colors have reversed, we have no trouble recognizing the interface. We automatically interpret the foreground and background colors. Invariance. The Gestalt principle of invariance explains how we perceive basic shapes as identical despite various transformations. These transformations include rotation, movement, size alterations, stretching, different lighting conditions, and variations in paths. This principle is crucial for recognizing faces, for example. Thanks to invariance, we can recognize our friends and family members from afar or a different angle even when they make funny faces. CAPTCHAs rely on the human ability to recognize shapes even if they are distorted. Pragnance. Pragnance describes the human tendency to simplify complexity. Our environment constantly bombards our senses with stimuli, while we have limited attention and processing capacity to handle all the complexity. Pragnance helps us see order and regularity in a world of visual competition. Pragnance shows the importance of simplicity. It is no accident that interface elements across applications use simple shapes such as rectangles and circles instead of complex ones that are hard to recall or process. Similarity. When items, objects, or elements share superficial characteristics, we perceive them as grouped. We can see the similarity principle in branding and design system guidelines. Brands implement design systems to guide users. For example, on the IDX homepage, all buttons are styled similarly to let the users know that clicking the button will lead to an action. All text elements that share a specific style will be interpreted as being part of the group. Say, links, headings, captions, etc. Symmetry and order. Humans tend to see visual elements as grouped when they are arranged symmetrically. The natural world is filled with symmetry or near symmetry, and our brains tend to favor symmetrical forms. Grid systems that evenly divide the space helps designers implement symmetry and order in user interfaces. Which of these shapes would you group together? Chances are you are going to pick the matching square brackets instead of the mismatched curly and square brackets combination. Google's homepage is symmetrical with almost all major elements center aligned and the two buttons, Google Search and I'm Feeling Lucky, nearly mirroring each other. Common fate. This principle refers to the human tendency to perceive visual elements moving in the same direction or in unison as groups. Visuals need not be moving to convey motion. Cues such as arrows and the rotational angle can indicate the direction in which the elements are perceived to move. The frequently asked questions section on websites is often an accordion. We interpret all the questions as part of a group moving in the same direction. In this case, the downward arrow points to the direction each of them will open in. In your designs, you should never confuse or delay users. Instead, guide them to their options so they can identify with organizations, brands rapidly. The background image and the text overlaid on it demonstrates the principle of figure and ground. The course cards have a similar structure, so users know they are a part of a group. The icons and descriptions are placed in close proximity to indicate they belong together. And finally, colors and graphics divide the page into separate regions. Without this, users would struggle to make associations between unrelated clustered together items and leave the site. With this, we come to an end to this episode of All Things Lean. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment in the comment section on what you'd like to hear more. Until next time, this is your host, Madhulika Rajahan, signing off. Have a wonderful day ahead.